is a great iOS synthesizer. At its core is the anisotropic synth engine. This synthesis engine is described as a wave animator. 8 waveforms called timbres are stacked vertically on an XY grid, while horizontal movement on this grid scans through the individual timbres. Vertical movement changes the sound source from one timbre to the next. Animation comes from various modulation options provided by Animoog, from manually scanning through the XY grid to orbits that can be created around a point on this grid, to creating an arbitrary path through the grid that can still be further modulated and manipulated. But the power of Animoog does not stop there. For the synthesist can create and import their own timbres into Animoog. At 44.1 kilohertz, Animoog timbres must be 371 milliseconds in duration and monaural. On and off, I've done a fair amount of experimentation in creating timbres for Animoog. And as experimentation goes, I did not always achieve the results I'd hoped for, but other times I was actually pretty happy with the group of timbres that I created. Recently, to better inform myself, I took a closer look at a few of the multitude of timbres provided with Animoog and via in-app purchase. In auditioning these, even though I knew they were being played in a forward-backwards loop, I knew they were definitely not a mere 371 milliseconds long. So I decided to import them into SoundForge. And now we can see that they are definitely 371 milliseconds in duration. Let's take a listen. Very different than when auditioned in Animoog. This made me think that the anisotropic synth engine is actually time-stretching the raw timbres before they are ever processed by parameters such as path rate. After a little experimentation, I time-stretched the imported timbre by 9. Now that does sound familiar. Remember this? Since Animoog auditions timbres in a forwards-backwards loop, I copied the time-stretch timbre, reversed it, and used Mix to recreate this forwards-backwards audition loop. This made me think that I should be able to take a much longer waveform, time compress it, and then import it into Animoog as a timbre. I chose this waveform. One consideration was to choose a waveform that was close to 3,339 milliseconds, which is 371 times 9. While I could have chosen any number of multiples of 371, I wanted to explore this particular relationship of times 9 or divide by 9 that seemed to be inherent in the anisotropic synth engine. A little experimentation taught me that I would not achieve an exact time compression down to 371 milliseconds. Even a reported new file time of 398 milliseconds only yielded a file of 367 milliseconds in length. So I chose a slightly higher reported new file length. Now with a file of 391 milliseconds in length, it's easy to edit it down to the correct size. Here I quickly find the zero crossing at the start of the file. I'll hope for the same at the end of the file, but I won't count on it. And even though we're going to have a glitch at the end of the new selected file length, we're not going to remove the extra waveform data just yet. That extra waveform data will now allow us to utilize crossfade loop to remove the glitch. There we go, success. Now we'll simply trim the extra data, and we have our wave file at 371 milliseconds. We'll normalize it to 0 dB. And save it. The one last thing we'll need to do is to convert this from a stereo to a mono file. Then we'll be ready to import it into Animoog. For importing files back into Animoog, I use iFunBox, which is a great file management utility. Here under Categories, you see where we have all of our timbres. And also folders can be created to organize timbres in. You can see I've created a few. I'm going to create a new folder for this new timbre. We'll call it MSL Timbre Test. Now going into this new folder, we'll select Copy from PC, find our new timbre, and just for good measure, click Refresh. How will my new timbre sound in Animoog? Let's find out. Some may find this information helpful, some may already be well aware of this. Regardless of that, I'd like this to be yet another online resource for those interested in Animoog. I'm looking forward to making more videos about creating timbres for Animoog, and also about extending Animoog's mod matrix with the iOS controller app Parat Plus.